He's going to take the kids. Anybody elementary and below, you're going to go next door with Lindsay. You're going to have a ton more fun over there than you're going to have here with me. But the rest of you, you're going to have fun with me. So be excited. We're going to have fun today. We're doing spiritual gifts. Right? We are on the second part of the first category of gifts. How does that sound? That sounds exciting. Second part of the first category. All right? I'm trying to split these up in ways that don't take us till Jesus comes back to finish it, but also in ways that that allow us to address this thoroughly. I'm hoping to get done by Advent. Don't do the math on that. But why are we talking about spiritual gifts? I want to hit that real quick. These are just reminders. If you haven't been here for some of these talks, I would encourage you to go back and listen either on our podcast. You can find it at Highlands Marietta, our YouTube page. You can find it at Highlands Marietta. You can catch some of those. But just really quick, why we think spiritual gifts matter for us at Highlands. First, we want to follow Jesus. Like, we think that's the crucial, the number one defining point of being a Christian is that you start to look and act like Jesus would look and act if you were walking around in your body. And so Jesus operated in his spiritual gifts. We did a whole week on that. I'm not going to go through all that again. But as followers of Jesus, we want to follow Jesus, right? That is number one. Second thing is our working definition of what a church is at Highlands. It's the family of God walking in spiritual disciplines. We talked about those. I hope you're practicing some of those. Operating in spiritual gifts, right? That's what we're going through right now. We want to learn and operate in our spiritual gifts because we think that's where really the power of the church comes from. And producing spiritual fruit, right? It talks about when we walk in the Spirit, we'll produce the fruit of the Spirit, and won't satisfy the desires of the sinful nature. So what should our church look like if we're doing this? Our church should be full of, oh my gosh, I'm going to mess it up. Spiritual gifts, which are love, joy, peace, patience, goodness, kindness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. I got them all. I tried to do it slower. I've been usually doing fast. Don't clap. I've been doing this for a lot of years. I should know this. So that's what we should look like. We should produce those things, right? People should look at our church and they should say, that's what they look like. We should be mature. We should be powerful. And we should be producing good fruit. So that's why we're doing this. And I want to tell you guys, again, I talked about this before. We believe with all of the craziness, all of the hardness, all of the terrible things acting in our culture, we sincerely believe in Highlands the greatest answer to all of those things is being conformed into the image of Jesus. Because as people are conformed in the image of Jesus, there is a power to transform the world. And so that's why these are the kind of things we focus on, even in times when our world feels insane. So a couple of things about your spiritual gifts when you're trying to figure out your spiritual gifts that I don't want you to forget. One is the DOTS rule. You guys remember that a couple weeks ago? You got these little stickers. You stuck them on different areas and categories. It was great. I've got that piece of paper. We're going to do that again about midway through, see where you guys are landing with some of these things. And the DOTS rule is this. Pay attention when something happens repeatedly in your life. You start adding up dots around a spiritual gift, and it might not just be a coincidence. It might not just be something. It might be the thing that God is calling you to. Second thing we talked about to understand and recognize your spiritual gift is what we call a holy discontent. And here's what that means. What makes you mad about church might be what you're gifted in. Right? If you're like, why don't people pray more? You might have a gift that's related to that. If you're like, we're going to talk today about mercy, and you're like, I'm sick of the church not showing more mercy, that might be your gift. All right? And then the last thing is this, ease and joy. Using your gift, right? We compared it, now that the leaves are falling, it's just started at my house, and I always go through that thing. You guys go through that thing when you're like, should I just let them all fall before I deal with this? Or do I deal with it along the way? This is my constant debate in the fall. But using your gifts feels more like using a leaf blower than a rake. It just feels like it flows better. All right? So, last week we started this category of love gifts, and we looked at administration, or 2 weeks ago, I'm sorry, we looked at administration and serving. The gifts of administration and serving. And this week we're going to finish the love gifts category by looking at mercy and giving. All right, quick reminder, all followers of Jesus are called to be merciful and called to give. Right? Okay, so there are disciplines of mercy and disciplines of giving, but the gifts of mercy and the gifts of giving appear in certain people when they have a passion and an unnatural, a supernatural, a spirit-given ability to engage in those things in a way that produces good fruit beyond the normal Christian call. Okay, so we're going to start. If I feel like I'm going fast, there's a lot sometimes to cover with these things, and I know people are going to get hungry at some point. You're going to quit listening. So, first, the gift of mercy. All right, there's a list. There's different lists of gifts throughout the New Testament, and none of them is completely conclusive. So you kind of have to piece them together. The gift of mercy is mentioned in a list in Romans 12. Where Paul's going through a list of gifts, and he says, if your gift is this, do this. If your gift is this, do it this way. And he says, if your gift is to show mercy, do it cheerfully. All right, so there's the gift of mercy. Right, and here's what I need you to know. Mercy is not an emotion in terms of its gifting. In terms of its spiritual gifting, mercy is a deep, divine compassion. It's God's mercy that translates into action. Right? It produces something. It's not just a feeling, it produces something. It's done cheerfully, and part of what that word means is it's done without seeking attention for yourself. So here's a working definition. Is it going to come up? Yeah, it's on there. It's the divine enablement to cheerfully and practically help those who are suffering or are in need. I should have said this earlier. There are some sheets on your tables. You can grab them. There's some on the back. I want these to be as helpful and as tangible to you as possible. So every week, these sheets have information, but they also have application. If you flip them over, on the back, they've got ways that you can apply going into these things this week. And if you don't feel like you have these gifts, we're going to talk about that too at the end, so don't worry. I really want this to be something that allows you to engage. All right, so here's what I want you to think. Gift of mercy. If I have this, here's characteristics of people who have the gift of mercy. They run towards messy people and situations rather than away. Okay, that is a clear sign. Anybody ever taken strength finders? Anybody ever done that? It was a big thing at the church that I used to work at. Strength finders, one of my top 5 gifts is called restorative. And that's what that means. Restorative means you run towards messy situations and not away. Some of us are called maximizers. That means we run toward really good situations and we make them better. I'm not good at making good situations better. I really excel at making horrible situations a little bit good. All right, so you run towards messy people and messy situations rather than away. You experience God's presence most with the disenfranchised, the abused, or the broken. Right? You're like spiritual EMTs. Merdad's not here today, but I was thinking about him when I was thinking about this. People that run towards it. People that say, this is what I do. This is where I excel. Right? And then you get confused that others don't feel the same pull. Right? You're like, why isn't everyone doing this? Why doesn't everyone run towards these people? God is near the brokenhearted. Right? Why are they not like this? Right? And on top of that, you're moved to action. You embrace sinners, as people would call them. You weep with those who weep, and you stand next to people that are accused. Right? Here's something that's interesting about people that generally have this gift, and this is one of the gifts I actually think that I have. One of the things that people have this gift is usually if before you came to, not usually, a lot of times if before you came to Jesus you were incredibly unmerciful, this produces in your life. And I don't know why that is, but that's 100% true for me. Right? So if you were once unmerciful and then you came to Jesus and all of a sudden your heart changed that really dramatically in terms of even action, that could be it. And you are continually led to seek out those who feel unworthy. All right, quick some examples of this in Scripture. Some of y'all know we've talked about this passage a lot. John chapter 8, Jesus and the woman caught in adultery. Right? Jesus runs to be by the side of this woman. Right? Another person is talked about in Acts 9:36. Her name is Tabitha. Her Greek name is Dorcas, which is unfortunate. But maybe that's why she was merciful. Maybe she developed being called Dorcas and really developed mercy in her. But this is what Acts 9:36 says about Tabitha. She was always doing good and helping the poor. Right? And here's what we know about Tabitha. She died, and her death created such a vacuum of mercy for the people around her that Peter was sent for and came to her and prayed that she would rise from the dead, and God rose her from the dead. Right? That's how powerful the gift of mercy was for that community and how much they needed. Now, mercy is different from serving, which we talked about last week. Right? Serving is often directed towards the leaders in the church. You guys remember we talked about the apostles had to get other people to serve at the table so they could do what they did. Serving is often directed towards leaders in the church, freeing them to lead more. And mercy is directed to those that are in acute distress and immediate need. Does that make sense? Does that difference make sense to you guys? Okay. All right. So why does mercy matter for us today? I hope you already know about why that matters for us today. Right? There are people in our community, there are people in our families, there are people in our world that are struggling silently all around us. And people with the gift of mercy see those people. They see them in their schools, they see them in their workplaces, right? These are the people that go to hospitals to visit people. And these are the people that even can see it in the people that smile but really are dying inside in church. But we don't have those people. We're free to be honest here. But there are always people that are going to come in and want to look like they're doing better than they are. People with the gift of mercy find those people. Right? If you're in middle school or high school, here's what I would share with you. Right? If you have the gift of mercy, sit with new people. Sit with people that are sitting alone. At lunch, in the classroom, at a sporting event. Right? Stand up. This is hard, but stand up for somebody that's being bullied. If God gave you the gift of mercy, use it where you are. Right? A lot of times we have adults, we have single adults in our community. Right? You have opportunities and time as a single adult that you can shift some things that maybe sometimes people who are married with families can't. And you can volunteer at a shelter around this area. Right? You can spend time, you guys know Marietta Mentors, right? Have you ever done that? There's something, it's an opportunity to mentor young people in the school system that need those. If you're married or if you have a family, right? One of the ways you can embody mercy is to be aware of what's going on with your neighbors. And when they're in loss or when they're in pain, invite them over. Right? Go see them. Right? Teach your family to include people that are left out. And especially, I'm just going to look down here because I always feel weird, our more mature adults, you decide if you're in that category. The older you get, the more you're experienced with grief and suffering and loss and pain. And a lot of people want to turn away from it like it's not real. And you won't. And that's a good thing. Visit people that are in hospitals. Pray with the grieving. Right? Be aware of it for people younger than you to let them know and offer them wisdom about what walking through that is like. And if you don't have this gift, if you don't have the gift of mercy, here's the thing. You should still be merciful. If you know people are suffering, like take them a meal. We love to cook, Highlands. Right? Even if it doesn't come naturally. All right, really quick, we're going to do a quick activity. I want you to stand up. I want you to stand up. I want you to find somebody that doesn't live in your house. And I want you to do this. I want each of you to take a turn. And I want you to ask what has been heavy for you this week. And I want you to listen. And then I just want you to say, I'm with you in that. Even if you're not, you're going to lie right now. That's okay. We'll deal with that in a minute. We'll confess and ask for forgiveness. So, find somebody who doesn't live in your house. If you don't have to move, great. That's great. Find somebody who doesn't live in your house. Ask what's been heavy this week. And then when they say it, just say, I'm with you in that. All right? This should take no more than 2 minutes. Go.
I already got your niece on my prayer list. Thank you. I know that's probably your number one.
Yes, that's it. It's just been rough for her. I mean, 13, and her name is Robbie. Yeah, so she's in 8th grade, and so it's been a week since she had surgery a week ago Wednesday, and it's hard, you know, and apparently they said it might have been an appendicitis, so instead of Crohn's disease, they took out some of her intestines, took out her appendix, and she's still walking stooped over, and she did go back to school Thursday for one class. It's just so exhausting, she can't even go full time, so.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm still going to pray for Robbie. I'm with you on that.
Thank you.
Yeah. My mom came home from the hospital on Monday to my sister's house. getting a little bit stronger. She's 93, has a lot of issues.
Oh boy.
So, our whole family's kind of a mess. I'm going through
And you got yours?
chemo.
Yeah.
Yeah, and still trying to get over my fatigue.
Yeah. You've got a lot on your plate. I'm with
Yeah,
you.
thanks.
I'm glad. So you're doing okay? You're having good.
Yeah.
I know it's got to be rough.
Yeah, it's like,
All right.
it is.
Get to the end.
Feel bad.
If you say something wrong, I'm with you.
Feel bad.
That I can understand.
Yeah, my dad died of cancer when he was in his 40s. So.
All right. When I ask you guys some
Yeah,
questions,
so I
you
know
can
it
stay
was-
where you are. That's good. Now you can mix the master a little. That's fantastic. So I want to ask you guys a couple of questions. One, just think about this. Don't answer them out loud. How did that feel? So did you get any ideas about how to help the person with what they shared? If you did, log those somewhere and just pray about it. Right? Sometimes presence is enough of an action, but if you have the gift of mercy, what happens is you start to feel compelled. You start to feel like, I have to engage this more. And so just pay attention to that in your heart. And here's my thing. Even if you didn't feel anything, if you're like, that was fine, but I don't feel compelled in that way, you should pray for that person because they just shared something with you. So at least pray for them this week. All right? So there's mercy. Now we're going to jump into giving, and then we're going to wrap it up after that. All right? So the gift of giving. All right? Here's the thing. We're going to talk a little bit about this. I want you guys to know that we've been doing this for 5.5 years, and I was doing the math. I've talked about tithes and offering and money less than 5 times in 5.5 years. We're going to talk a little bit about that as we get into this, because all Christians, hear this, are called to give. All followers of Jesus are called to give, right? And that is rich and poor, that is young and old, right? There are 2 types of giving that the Bible talks about that are things that are spiritual disciplines. All right, the first is tithing. If you look in Malachi chapter 3, you can see this in verse 10. I don't think I have it on the screen, so I'm just going to say, you can look at that. God, basically what God says in that passage is, listen, the reason that you're experiencing lack is because you have not brought me your first fruits. You have not brought me a tenth of your first fruits like I asked you for. And the reason God asked us for that isn't that God needs it, it's that we need to know that everything comes from God. And so God says, if you give me the first 10% of it, then that's a chance for your heart to be recentered around the right narrative again. But he says, basically in Malachi, God says, look what I'll do if you bring me a tithe. Look what I will do for you. I will always give you more back than you ever give me. And then the second type of giving, right, is offering. That every follower of Jesus should engage in. 2 Corinthians 9:7 says, God loves a cheerful giver. An offering is something beyond a tithe that just says, I want this to go towards whatever the needs are. I'm going to give above and beyond because I'm going to offer this to God. All right, so I do want to say this. I was thinking about this and praying for us this week, Highlands. We are great at a lot of things. And we're actually really good at giving to certain things. We're not great at tithing. Like, if I'm just honest, we're just not great at it. I did the math the other day. So most months, Highlands is looking at the math and being like, oh, how are we going to do this? And we come in strong at the end of the year through people giving above and beyond. I did the math the other day. If every adult who regularly comes to our church gave $400 a month, we would never worry about money. We would never not make what we needed for the month. That's how little we use Highlands. Like, it's crazy. So this is a terrible time to walk in. I'm talking about money for a minute because we're talking about the gift of giving. So no, this is not a normal situation. I don't know you, so I just want you to know that. That's not much. Like, we're pretty streamlined. And so I say that to you for a couple of reasons. One is that I do truly think we miss out on connection with God, on abundant life, by not recognizing that our finances belong to the Lord. The second thing I'll say is this. I don't know that we will ever thrive in abundance as a church the way God wants us to thrive until we take care of that. There's so much more. It's funny, we do so much, Highlands. Do you know how much more we could do with just a little bit? I hope you guys know by now, we're not trying to hoard your money. I'm not trying to save up for a jet. Right? Our goal is to keep the lights on and give the rest away. And I just want you to think about what you could do. Again, like some of you are like, I don't have $400, but some of you have $800. And you can cover somebody. Some of you have 100 and somebody else has an extra 300. Right? That's the way that works. Right? And here's the thing. Until God has access to our treasure, he doesn't fully have access to us. We all know that. We all know that where our heart is, our treasure is. Right? So, there is also a gift of giving. Right? And that's in the Romans 12 passage as well. Remember, Paul said, if it's mercy, do it cheerfully. He goes on to say, if it's giving, then give generously. All right, so there is a gift of giving that's beyond just the regular discipline of giving. And here's a definition. Here's our working definition for that. This is taken from a book called Convergence that talks about spiritual gifts. Here is the definition. The gift of giving is the capacity to give liberally, that's our money, our time, and our resources, to meet the needs of others with a pure motive that senses giving is simply sharing what God has given. Right? That's what makes it a gift. Is that there's a sense in you that you're like, of course, why would everyone not do this? This is what I want to do. Here's some characteristics of people with the gift of giving. A desire to channel resources with joy, right motive, and abundance of generosity. Here's the deal. You don't have to have an abundance of resources to have the gift of giving. Okay? You don't have to have an abundance of resources to have the gift of giving. Maybe what you're just good at is seeing resources and pulling them together. Right? You're the kind of person that gives more of yourself, gets more of your time, gets more of your resources, and more regularly to God's work than the average person. You think a lot about ways to give, and you're sad when you're unable to give. Some of you are like, I'm out. That's not my gift, right? But some of you are, like, you're sad when you're unable to give. Right? And when you hear about needs, it inspires a fresh awareness of what you have and how you could contribute. You say things like this, and this time I don't have the gift of giving because I've never said this honestly. I've said it because it was the right thing to say, but you say this honestly. I wish I could make more money so I could give more away. Right? A lot of times people with the gift of giving prefer anonymity. We're going to talk about when being anonymous isn't helpful, but a lot of times people who give with the gift of giving prefer anonymity. They hold possessions lightly, and they discover that the more they give away, the more they end up with to give away. Right? And for the person with the gift of giving, here's what I want you to know. It's the amount of joy, not the amount you give, that is the indicator. Does that make sense? Again, you don't have to have a lot. It's the joy you experience in giving. Here's some biblical examples of the gift of giving. You guys remember the kid who just had a few fishes and loaves and gave them to the disciples so they could produce an abundance, right? Gift of giving. Some of you guys know the story. It's called the story of the widow's mite. People are giving offerings and Jesus is observing them. And there's a woman, a very poor woman who goes up and she gives 2 coins, which is all she has. And Jesus says she gave more than anybody, right? She gave all she had, and that meant she was giving more than anybody. And then in the book of Acts, there's a guy named Barnabas who decides to sell all of his land and his house, and he gives the money to the apostles, and he sets an example that inspires people throughout the early church. Here's some water. Giving do for the church. All right? When you have the gift of giving and you use it in the church, it becomes a real faithful testimony. This is why it doesn't always need to be anonymous. Some of you, that would be uncomfortable for you, but when Barnabas brought his stuff before the church, people saw it and they were like, holy smokes, like, this is serious. Like, I need to look into my own heart and see what I can give. So sometimes actually God will call you to give publicly to inspire other people. And always, 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 testimonies of generosity build faith. They always do. And they train other people to grow in the discipline and the gift of giving. People need to see people with the gift of giving to know whether or not they have the gift of giving. All right, so why does giving matter in our world today? So I don't know if you know this, but one of the predominant idol cultures in our world is consumerism. That surprise anybody? Right? How many Amazon packages did you get this week? I'm not telling you my answer. Right? We live in a consumer culture that tells us to get more, upgrade more, keep more. And in that culture, the Spirit raises up people with the gift of giving, not just for the church, but for the world, to see there's another way. That you can hold your possessions lightly, and you can release them joyfully, and God will provide all your needs and all your joy. Right? So, if you're a middle schooler or high school, you don't have any money. All you got is your parents' money, so don't do it. No, I'm kidding. Just share what you have, man. Learn to share what you have. Learn to give away. Right? If you're working a job, start learning how to tithe from there. It's good for you. Right? And if you don't have any money, give time. Give attention to people that are in need. Right? Sometimes you find out, I'm going to older people now, about needs, and you have a little extra. Contribute to that. Somebody's rent when they lose their job. Meals for a friend going through a difficult time. Families. Families. Jay. Families. It's us. Speaking of us. You can budget better. You can be aware of what you have, and you can actually create a budget. I know some of you guys are like, we are to the gills right now. You don't have to be. I promise you, it will be better for you to release you more if you figure out how to give out of what you already have instead of waiting to have more. If you don't know where to give, obviously you give to the things we do, but you can sponsor children internationally. There's great opportunities. Right? You can give away clothes and toys to shelters and to people and to places that need them. Right? If you do have an abundance of money, use it. Donate resources. Donate money to cover people to do ministry. Right? If you're really good with money, provide financial counseling to people who aren't. Right? And if you're a believer without the gift of giving, you should still. You should budget. You should figure out how to tithe. I know that's hard. I know that's such a church thing. That's why I don't like to talk about it, but it's just true. And you should respond to needs as they arrive. All right. Here's our giving activity. All right, everybody stand up. As you're able. All right. If anybody in this room, I'm sorry. Yeah. If anybody in this room has ever been generous to you through encouragement, time, prayer, or resources, I want you to take one step forward. Anybody in this room has ever been generous to you? Yeah, I'm not going to say you didn't move forward, but almost all of us moved forward. And so here's my encouragement to you. Pay that forward this week. Pay that forward this week. And I want you to think about one way, you can sit down. I want you to think about one way you will give cheerfully this week. And I want you to see if it's cheerful for you. And I want you to see how it makes you feel. And I want you to think about this. The things I talked about just now. Did they make you feel excited? Did they make you feel nervous? Did they make you feel angry? Right? Did you start to say, what are the ways I could give? That could be the gift of giving. All right. We're wrapping up. And we're going to eat. So, our city is full of opportunities to show mercy and to give generously. Right? There's schools, there's local food pantries and shelters, there's encouraging a coworker, there's faithfully giving to your church. Right? And even if you don't possess the gifts, you should practice the calling. Even if you don't have the gift of mercy, you should still live mercifully. Even if you don't have the gift of giving, you should still live generously. The difference is this. Those with the gift should be leading the way for us. We need you to lead the way for us so we can practice the discipline. We need you to inspire us, and we need you to help us stretch further than we think we can go. That's part of the supernatural piece of operating in your gift. I want to say one more thing. If you're here and you're still trying to figure out how you feel about Jesus as Lord and Savior, then I get that this is weird for you. Mercy and giving, here's what I want to tell you. Mercy and giving are virtues everybody can admire and ascribe to. They can. In society, having mercy and giving generously is a good thing. Most people would say they're good for you and they're good for society. That's not a God thing, that's just a thing, right? But what makes them transformative and lasting is their source. If they're only an effort to be a better person or to make a better world, they'll only last as long as you want to be a better person and want to make a better world. They'll only last as long as people respond well to you. Right? What makes them spiritual gifts is that they end up being sourced in Jesus himself. The truth is, mercy and giving, they're not just good human qualities. They are the heartbeat of God. Jesus didn't just teach about mercy. He showed it when he welcomed sinners, when he healed the broken, and when he forgave even those who nailed him to a cross. He didn't just talk about giving, and he didn't just give 10% of what he made. He gave his very life for everyone. Right? So if you've been looking for something and feeling like you come up short, the songs we sang today, if you feel the weight of guilt, loneliness, or restlessness, I want you to know that I don't believe that you're here accidentally. Right? I believe that God wants you to know today his great mercy and his great giving, that you will never out mercy and you will never outgive. Right? God's mercy is for you. His giving is for you. Right? But receiving his mercy does mean becoming a person who shows mercy. Receiving his gift does mean becoming someone who is also giving generously. Not because that's how you earn it, but because that's what it means to reflect and follow Jesus. All right. We're gonna take a short time for questions today. We're gonna go to 11:35. All right, around discussion. This is pretty simple. Who has shown you mercy? Do you think they have the gift of mercy? Who do you know who's a giver? Do you think they have the gift of giving? Do you think you have either of those gifts? And if so or if not, what's your takeaway today? All right, so grab one of those, grab a couple of those, get with at least two other people around you. So at least groups of 3, if not bigger. And then y'all talk about these things, and I'll come up and close this at 11:35, and we'll eat.